Welcome to BizTech's Conversations. I'm Brian Fernandez, and our guest today is Daniel Bernbeck. He's the CEO of the Malaysian-German Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, Daniel, give us a quick overview of the German-Malaysian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and your role in engaging with your various stakeholders.
Yeah, this is a good question because German chambers abroad, like Malaysian-German chamber in Malaysia, are a bit unique compared to other chambers because we are a so-called bilateral chamber. We are based on members from Malaysia and Germany, Malaysian companies, German companies, and this is even reflected in our board of directors. These are business people from Malaysia and business people from Germany. So we have 16 board members. I'm one of them. I'm sitting on the German bench of the board, like one of the 8 Germans, and then we have 8 Malaysian board members as well. So this is our role. We are the bridge into Malaysia and into Germany. So we are working both ways. And we are also the official representative of the German economy to Malaysia. So we are in charge of representing the German economy's interests in Malaysia for the sake of lobbying and advocacy and talking to the authorities together with our ambassador working on the governmental side. So we are more the representative of the private sector in Malaysia.
Now, walk us through some key investments over the last 2 years made by German companies. And what sort of planned investments are planned in 2021?
Of course, the focus and the center of activities of German companies in Malaysia is electronics and electrics. So this goes into all the semiconductor industry, like the outstanding investments by Infineon, but also Osram and Bosch, mostly in Penang or in the north of Malaysia, but also in Malacca. But
yeah,
then we also have medical.
Infineon, I think, committed to about over $3 billion up to 2029, correct?
Yes, that's correct, because they will be investing heavily into research and development. And this is, of course, also a very strong complement to the existing ecosystem of Malaysia, because you only do that as an investor if you have the right infrastructure, if you have the right workforce in place, if you have the supply chain in place, your suppliers and your customers are here. So this only makes sense if you have all these fundamental factors ready for you, waiting for you. Otherwise, it would be a dangerous investment. And I'm sure that people are very careful in selecting the destinations and the locations. So we have Infineon in Kulim, we have Infineon in Malacca. But I would also like to highlight the medical sector and the medical devices industries like B. Braun, also in Penang, but also we have Fresenius and other German medical companies in the Klang Valley. And so there is a few clusters where Germans are very active, and this will also reflect or has been reflecting the investment or the focus of investments in the past. And I'm quite positive and hopeful that this will be also continue to be the focus of interest in foreign direct investments in 2021.
I think that one of the key things that comes out of what you just told us is the fact that these investments are higher value add investments, exactly the type of investments that we want to attract in Malaysia to get us out of the middle income trap. Because what you mentioned, for example, in Infineon, that's R&D investment. That is not screwdriver factory, low value investment. So I think that's really good. The other thing which Germany is very strong and well known for is its strong SME base of technology and engineering companies. So could you tell us a little bit more on how that sort of investment has come into Malaysia and what sort of local partnerships have been developed?
Yeah, that's in fact one of the main topics that we always have as German representatives of German economy. It is our backbone of the German economy is the Mittelstand, which is the German term for the SMEs. There is a slightly different definition of SME than what we see in other countries, like also in Malaysia, because in Germany, the SMEs can be quite big. They can employ thousands of people and still be running as SMEs because,
SME, yeah.
yeah, because they are structured like SME. SME is not just a simple question of turnover and staff, but it is more the mindset and the way of thinking and the ownership. So an SME in Germany is not a stock listed company attracting investors from all over the globe, but mostly family owned, very, very close and very risk averse and very strong ties to the society around them. So they are very strong in social responsibility. They have this kind of a culture of leading their own staff, like more like a family than just numbers on a scale or on a table. So this is the culture of a German SME, and German SMEs are mostly known to be very flexible, very fast, and attracting and or understanding the market developments. And this has made them strong, and especially in the crisis, in the current crisis, but also in the earlier ups and downs that we faced. German SMEs are very fast movers. They are quite agile and alert. So, and they have no long distance or long structures of hierarchy or decision making. This is mostly quite straightforward. There is an owner. He knows what he's doing. He invests his private money. He doesn't have to ask any stakeholders. He just does it when he thinks it's the right place and the right thing to do. And this has been also an important factor in Malaysia. And what is really important to mention is German investors, German SMEs find the perfect fit in Malaysia, because we also here in Malaysia, you have mostly SME structures. The country is not big multinational, internationally renowned super players or strong companies, but it is mostly also SME industry. So Germans find counterparts that are acting the same way. They have the same mindset, and it's easy to partner with them. As German SMEs cannot bring in large numbers of staff, they are relying heavily on the local structures, on the local workforce. And this is another element which we are very proud of, is the investment and the activity in technical vocational education and training. So instead of bringing staff into the country, which is expensive because you have to pay the relocation, you pay international salaries, you have to give them expat packages and all that, you would rather try to upskill and train the local workforce in order to make them fit to work for you and for a long term and a long time. So this is something that is a bit special on the investments of German SMEs also in Malaysia.
I think, which brings me to another point, Daniel, about the fact that there have been some challenges facing foreign companies now with regard to hiring foreign workers. And that's unfortunately a result of the pandemic and also the new regulations from the Malaysian government and the Ministry of Human Resources. Could you elaborate on that, and what are the challenges that German companies are facing operating in Malaysia here?
Yeah, that's in fact something that is keeping us quite busy the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks since we learned about it. It was end of October somewhere that this will be enacted as of 1st of November 2020, so that there would be a platform that all jobs for foreigners would have to be advertised for 30 days on My Future Jobs internet platform. And then all interviews would have to be conducted together with representatives of SOCSO and other organizations. Of course, this is something, as I said, the SME kind of mindset, it is a very private, it's a very close or tightly knit network. They are running a company. They want to know what they do. They want to decide on their own because they risk their own money. So they are very careful and very sensitive to influences and administrative conditions or preconditions or any kinds of factors they have to observe. So this is, I think, what will be troubling them, and they have reported, and we have conducted a survey on that. They have reported back that over 67% of them that replied to our questionnaire said it will definitely damage their investment and their future existence in Malaysia if that would come into force and this law would be enacted. because it simply removes their authority of running their own company the way they want to run it. They also, with almost 80%, replied that they would be happily employ Malaysian workforce could they find the right skill set, the right qualification, even also the right motivation and the ability to work in the required profile or position. So they only employ foreigners, expats especially, under employment pass 1 or 2 or 3, if they need to do so, because they don't find the appropriate staff in the country. Because, as I said, it is just a simple calculation, a quite simple, straightforward management decision. It is much more expensive to bring a foreigner over. He doesn't know the country. His family must come over. They might have to find a house. They have to find the right school. So there's a lot of cultural adjustments needed. If you have a Malaysian that has the right skill set and speaks English and is trained on the job, this is straightforward. You don't have to apply for employment passes anymore. So the 80% they would like to employ Malaysians, and this is what they said. This is very like scary for them to be suddenly forced to consider employing people that they don't find appropriate for their job.
I think, okay, so let's be fair, and let's look at it from the government's perspective and from a societal perspective. I think that the idea behind it is with good intentions. The execution is probably poor. So the idea behind it is, of course, the job situation is very poor. The employment situation is very poor. All countries around the world are doing the same thing. We need to protect our own. Fair enough. However, where I have a problem, and I think probably we have a similar mindset in that way, is the fact that I think that we should not restrict the hiring of foreigners at high levels, particularly for specialist skill sets, for key management roles, perhaps because of a new investment or things like that. But in fact, we should reduce our low-end employment of low-skilled workers. I think that will then probably balance out the equation much better, because what my fear as a citizen is that these sort of rules will scare away foreign investors.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This measure was not focusing on migrant workers or plantation workers or all this cheap labor, I would say. This was really focusing on the employment pass 1, 2, 3. So these are people that are they have a degree or they have some qualification. They are earning 5,000 ringgit or more, and this is something like the focus, of course, of a high quality job or highly paid or better paid job. But still, also in our survey, we checked on the situation or the proportion in these SMEs. Mostly my member companies that we asked are SMEs, so they have like 100 to 200 staff. These are not the big players so much. So most of them said we have less than 5% foreigners in our workforce. So 95% of the workforce in these companies is Malaysian. And I fully understand, and I fully concur with, and I support the intention of Malaysia's government to reduce unemployment, to weather the crisis, which is very hard on the society, and it really is a really tough decision to make here to bring in people into jobs. But if you look at 5% or less than that foreigners compared to 95% of locals, then my perception would be that the first intention should be to increase this kind of proportion, so that maybe expand foreign direct investment, attract more foreigners, because they would have a ratio of 1 to 2 or something like more than like almost 20, 1 to 20. So because they would employ, if you have one more investor, he could have a ratio of the same. So he would have one person maybe in the company and 20 Malaysians employed. So instead of asking the foreigners to leave and not be extended in their employment pass, you would rather ask them to come and employ more Malaysians, because the ratio is quite
Actually,
perfect for the Malaysian intention.
Daniel, in the technology sector, in MDEC, for example, Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, there are specific schemes, in fact, to attract people, individuals, tiny companies to come in and be given a special pass so that they set up their companies. Maybe it's 5 people, 6 people, but essentially the whole idea is that what you just spoke about, the multiplier effect of that person. One person may equal to as many as 20 jobs, over the next 2 or 3 years. So I think that different branches of the government are doing different things and a different approach, and we hope that perhaps common sense will sort of come to a compromise in between, so everybody can basically go about their business. But Daniel, let me ask you something that, we look at opportunities. The recent signing of RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, is really seen as given trade a shot in the arm. How do you think the region will be impacted, particularly German companies?
Interesting question. Yes, because it is an interesting, and as honestly also in the time that it took to have this agreement negotiated, it is quite surprising that it comes right now. My personal take, and I'm a lawyer by education, not so much an economist, but I would say the most important, or the impression that I have in the front of my head is it is mostly a political move of China. It is also a bit of a blow to US that pulled out of the CPTPP and now is like a bit left out of the game and standing on the sideline. And then now China is in the center of the game. This is more like something like a signal into political hemisphere. It's not so much, I would say, already to be felt in the daily business of investors, of business, of SMEs. But of course, it does one thing. It combines existing free trade agreements. So it does not really create new sphere, but it has been like an umbrella over the multitude of existing free trade agreements that already in ASEAN and others exist. It will it will enhance, and I hope it will also draw the attention, and it will enhance already the powerhouse of the world, which is Southeast Asia. And I think bringing the weight of China into that and having terms which are open to friendly trade and open markets, and somehow also the hope of the smaller countries towards China would be that it will protect them from being pushed to the sidelines by the superpower, this huge market of China. It brings them to the negotiation table, so there is ways of communication which is more level playing field for everybody. So I think this increases the importance of Southeast Asia. It will hopefully bring Southeast Asia and Malaysia in the center of it to the attention of the Europeans. And the only possible effect it will have, I would say, is multinational companies that are international players should and will consider setting up a headquarter or a regional headquarter, or maybe some foothold here in this region to benefit from that. Because those who are inside, they are more or less already benefiting from free trade. But those who are outside, like in Europe, in the US, they might consider bringing over maybe a representative office or a regional office into this market, maybe some production facilities to benefit from these, from this open market culture. And what I think it is really important to note, it comes in times of very nationalist and populist and segregationist, isolationist policies dominated by Donald Trump. So I hope this really points into the right direction. We are, especially Germany, especially also Malaysia, we are depending on open markets. We are exporting nations. We cannot live with separation and segregation. We have to be including everybody else. So I think this is pointing into the right direction.
So Daniel, so I've got to challenge you and ask you this. We as Malaysia, and you brought up a very good point. Now, ASEAN as a whole will start to look a lot more attractive to people who are not already here. So I think that's a key takeaway from what you just said. What can we do as Malaysia to be attractive for companies to set up as a regional headquarters? What can Invest KL do to help? What do we need to do from a regulation standpoint? Because, Daniel, the reality is you've been here for 6 years. Malaysia has great infrastructure. We have educated workforce. We've got very low cost relative to the educational level, relative to our neighbors. I mean, you talk about the cost of real estate. We have a lot of advantages going for us. We do have a significant disadvantage right now, which is political instability. So that is a challenge. But we have so many positives. Yeah. What can we do?
If you look at I would say the main statistics that always comes into play if you talk about the attractiveness of an investment destination, you look at the ease of doing business index. Malaysia is ranking in a wonderful position, ranking 12th in the world. Germany, by the way, is 25 or 24. So Malaysia is much higher up on the scale than Germany. And it is the number 2 next to Singapore in Asia, in Southeast Asia. So it is already, it has done in the past administrations of this country have done very well in attracting investors and making it business friendly. I think this is also a position that it needs some protection. So Malaysia needs to, if you ask me what does Malaysia need to do, I would say protect your wonderful position. You are already so much up in the top, close to the top 10. So please stay business friendly and be more attractive, maybe reduce even the already low costs, like for instance, tax. If you compare the taxation level of Malaysia, corporate taxes, Malaysia is like 24%. Singapore is 17%. Indonesia is now considering of reducing from 22 to 20%. So they are lowering, and Malaysia in the comparison to other ASEAN countries is quite the country with the highest tax rate. So this is worth considering. And I know that budget that will be discussed today or in the next few weeks, I think the budget is relying heavily on tax income, and that is a challenge. If now I am the advocate of a reduction of tax, but I think that is a very important point, and it's not incentives so much. It's the basic rate, that the permanent rate. Incentives go away one day, but this permanent tax system is something that needs to be considered. And then there is one more point, and that ties nicely to what I said earlier on the My Future Jobs, because if you look where Malaysia loses and why it's not in the top 10 of the ease of doing business, it's the bureaucracy and the red tape and the administrative complexity. Okay. Funny enough, I said Germany is 24, Malaysia is 12, but when it comes to red tape, they are neighbors. They are both in rank 152 or something like that, way down there. And wow, that is pulling Malaysia down from the top 10. And that is where the My Future Jobs regulations or any of these regulations that are somehow hitting or endangering foreigners or scaring foreigners to come into this country, they are feeling like, oh, is my family now able to live here for the next 5 years? Or do I have to be worried that my employment pass will not be extended, then I have to move back and I cannot finish my job here? Then the company would simply say, okay, then if that uncertainty prevails, then this country is not safe for us, for our investment. And as I said, this is SME investment. This is not multinationals that just simply can blow 100 million euros out of the window. The SMEs don't do that. They are dead if they do that. They are just, yes. They don't have that money. So the most important part is to reduce the red tape and to improve the speed of administrative processes, the responsiveness of the governmental office like immigration, and others. At the moment, everybody's on home, working from home, but sometimes we have the issue, we cannot reach anybody. We don't receive replies, we don't get approvals, we don't get forward. This is of course very dramatic right now in the pandemic, but it has also been a bit opaque in the past. So what my petition or my request to the Malaysian government would be, look at the red tape, improve the business-friendly situation further, and that will bring Malaysia into the top 10, and then you have no worries. Then you will have like queues of foreign direct investors into Malaysia.
Now, Daniel, final question. What is the outlook of your chamber in terms of 2021? It's been a tough 2020, but what are your members looking at? Which sectors do you think will do well in 2021?
I think as this pandemic is so broad, I think, and affecting like all kinds of supply chains and markets and the demand and from all over the world. As you know, Malaysia is producing a lot of industrial products and then selling it or exporting it from here. So Malaysia's development depends heavily on the demand in other areas. China, of course, China is already picking up. Europe is still struggling heavily with the pandemic. US, depending on also the political situation, but also the pandemic, because it's a nightmare to imagine to be living in there, and this is affecting the job markets and the investment decisions. But overall, I would say Malaysia being in Southeast Asia, and Southeast Asia being a region which is by the successful battling of the crisis by the governments. Europe, the German newspapers always say, so what are the Asians doing better than us? Why are these Asian countries so much better in the statistics of COVID? And Malaysia, even though it's record numbers right now, above 2,000 cases yesterday, but still this is so much lower in comparison to the population than in all the countries in Europe. So Malaysia is doing well, and the government is taking the right measures. What we need to do is to really reboost and restart the economy quickly in order to support the markets like Vietnam and China and others, because they are picking up. And I think it goes across the sectors. You are asking about, I think the construction industry needs the most recovery, tourism industry, airline industries. Of course, they are really struggling. And I think there is the biggest potential to develop. All the suppliers, we have companies here that do maintenance, repair, overhaul for jet engines. Of course, they are now almost out of business because there is no jet engines to be overhauled. But this will pick up, and I hope it will come back to 70% of the 2019 figures. So I see there is sectors also like the healthcare and also maybe like protection equipment. Of course, they are doing well right now. Food supplements are doing well right now. There's some sectors and services, technical services, because people cannot enter the country without quarantine. And there would be another request of mine would be to open a fast track and a green lane for these technicians that only come over, or managers, also specialists that have to be in the country for less than a week, just do some quick work. You should have these kind of tracking devices that they cannot run around and do socializing and shopping and tourism, but they should do their work, go from the hotel, from the airport to the hotel, from the hotel to the factory, and then back to the hotel and back to the airport. That should be support from the Malaysian government that would really help the companies, because they are suffering from the travel bans. But there is companies that are benefiting from it because they have their staff in the country. And as the service engineers cannot enter the country, so those who are here are ready to go, and they are really booming right now because they are ready to help companies with complex technical questions. So I would see there is a broad range of sectors that could recover and will recover hopefully fast in the next 6 months. I would say the first half year of 2021. depending on the vaccine. But this is just in the last days, of course, everybody has been very happy to see that there is movement, there is some hope, and there is some silver linings to have vaccines spread throughout the world for the frontliners, for the most vulnerable, and then, of course, to the rest. But I think this already gives the positive sentiment and the business sentiment nice pat on the back and a nice boost factor and a bit of tailwind, so that you really can look forward into a better year 2021.
Daniel, thank you very much for this very frank discussion. We've been speaking to Daniel Bernbeck, the CEO of the Malaysia-German Chamber of Commerce, on BizTech's Conversations. I'm Brian Fernandez. Check out www.biztech.asia for business.